Maybe the dead know, their eyes widening at last, seeing the high beams of a million galaxies flick on at twilight, hearing the engines flare, the horns not letting up, the frenzy of being. I want to be one notch below Bedlam, like a radio without a dial, wide open so everything floods in at once, and sealed tight so nothing escapes. Not even time, which should curl in on itself and loop around like smoke. Yes, it's the one you've all been waiting for. Today we will be discussing Unreal Unearth, the third album from our man Hozier. This album is as beautiful as it is ugly. It lays human flaws out, it bears them to the world for everyone to see, and also shines a light on the natural magic of human connection. This is going to be a long one, so buckle in because I would love for you to join me on this journey. Now, as we already know, the album is loosely built around Dante's Inferno, so we'll be touching on that throughout. I would like to say, however, that this is not a concept album, so we won't be treating it as such. If this is the first video of mine that you're seeing, I would suggest going back and looking at my recaps of the Eat Your Young EP and all the singles from this album, because it will give you a good, solid, foundational knowledge of Inferno and its historical and cultural significance. And I kind of didn't want to rehash all of that in this video, mainly to save my own vocal cords. So we will be skipping over the singles that I have already covered, but I will link all of them down below along with their timestamps if you haven't seen them, and you can click on them as we go throughout this video. Now you'll learn more about this later on, but I have lined up a little special surprise for you guys. I've been working very hard on it, so stick around if you want to know what that is. It's not a Hozier interview before you get too excited. And now, without further ado, let's begin our descent. Through me you go to the grief-racked city. Through me to everlasting pain you go. Through me you go and pass among souls. Justice inspired my exiled creator. I am a creature of the holiest power, of wisdom the highest and of primal love. Nothing till I was made, only eternal beings. And I endure eternally. Surrender as you enter every hope you have. The album opens with a descent, much like Inferno does, and that begins with De Selby Part 1. At last, when all the world is asleep, you take in the blackness of air, the likes of a darkness so deep that God at the start couldn't bear. Now, this is a really direct reference to The Third Policeman, which is where the character of De Selby comes from. Again, if you haven't watched my video on Part 2 of De Selby, go back and watch that. It will explain the whole thing. But essentially, De Selby is this very eccentric scientist. One of De Selby's theories is that nighttime is actually just caused by an accumulation of black air. All commentators have treated De Selby's disquisitions on night and sleep with considerable reserve. He held that darkness was simply an accretion of black air, i.e. a staining of the atmosphere due to volcanic eruptions too fine to be seen with the naked eye, and also to certain regrettable industrial activities involving coal tar byproducts and vegetable dyes. And B, that sleep was simply a succession of fainting fits brought on by semi-asphyxiation due to A. And this darkness can be linked to the darkness of the forest that Dante is first wandering around in the start of Inferno. This reference to De Selby's theories also introduces a common theme that runs throughout the album of death and what it means to die, and if there are different ways that a person can die other than what we traditionally know as death. And the cyclical nature of that. This album warps our linear view of what life is, and I guess that also does link to Inferno. De Selby's theory about life really helps us to understand the altered reality that Hozier is presenting to us in this album. Human existence being a hallucination containing in itself the secondary hallucinations of day and night, the latter an insanitary condition of the atmosphere due to accretions of black air. It ill becomes any man of sense to be concerned at the illusory approach of the supreme hallucination known as death, and sit unseen with the only inner upheld. Your reflection can't offer a word to the bliss of not knowing yourself, with all the mirroring gone from the world. I'm guessing this is kind of referencing the pandemic and having that time to be completely by yourself, not seeing the reflections of yourself in other people. We were all sort of confronted with ourselves in a way that we hadn't before. Mirrors are also linked to de Selby's theories about the physics of life. He believed that mirrors held the secret to eternity. Light moves at a fixed rate. That's something that science does know. So what de Selby was arguing, that mirrors, when you look into a mirror, the reflection that you're seeing has to be scientifically just a fraction of a millisecond slower than what we're seeing. And look, I was never good at science, but that kind of makes sense to me. Now, de Selby claims that by using a very long array of parallel mirrors, he was able to look back far enough that he saw the reflection of his face, but as a 12-year-old boy. Takes the theory a bit further than, what reality can understand. So not so believable, but a cool idea nonetheless. And I think what a lot of us were confronted with during the pandemic was our inner child. And a lot of people worked out, what was important to them and what they needed to be doing. And perhaps that's what Hozier is referencing here.
But still the mind, rejecting this new empty space, fills it with something or someone. No closer could I be to God, or why he would do what he's done.
So here Hozier is simply comparing his current situation with the reasoning behind why God created life. It seems like Hozier likes to fill an empty space with a person, and this album kind of just follows the story of that person. The wording of that third line is particularly interesting, no closer could I be to God. And the next part of the journey is through Limbo, which is held for people that cannot enter heaven because they didn't accept Christ in their earthly lives. They are held at a distance, and in some translations, the wording is no closer could they be to God. And then we go into this really beautiful section of Gaelic, and I tried to pronounce it on camera, but I don't think it's the best, so it's probably safer if I just read you the translation. With older languages, obviously word meanings evolve over time, so there's not really one definite translation. A lot of people have their own interpretations, and if you have the time, I would definitely recommend digging through them all, because they all add their own little unique touch. I chose this particular translation though because it seemed to be the most agreed upon and really has a little bit of what everyone was saying. Although you're light and bright, you come to me like nightfall. You and I are mixed up together. It's a dark art. It's the art of shape-shifting. And I just think that's a beautiful way of explaining metamorphosis and really reflects all the themes of the album. Obviously, this flows straight into de Selby Part 2, which I've already covered. So if you haven't seen that, click down below, go watch that and then come back. And if not, just carry on with the journey. Let us descend, the poet now began, and enter this blind world. His face was pale. I shall go first, then you come close behind. I was aware of his altered colour. The first circle that we travel through is Limbo, which is held for people who either came from non-Christian backgrounds or died before they had the chance to be baptised. So really, by no true fault or sin of their own, it's just they weren't Christian, so you don't get into club heaven. Limbo actually derives from the Latin term limbus, which means edge or boundary. So they are held away from the violence of the inner circles, but they're also a great distance from heaven. So here Dante meets some important historical figures like Homer and Socrates and Aristotle and other virtuous souls that have passed, and they inhabit what is described as a dark and gloomy wooded area. Here in the dark, we're only hearing told. There were no tears, no weeping, only sighs that caused a trembling in the eternal air. Sighs drawn from sorrowing, although no pain. This weighs on all of them, those multitudes of speechless children, women, and full-grown men. So while they aren't punished for anything, they do have to live with the sorrow of never knowing heaven. And this brings us to First Time. The main theme that ties this song to this circle is the act of naming. Throughout this song, we get told that something within Hozier dies and something is born when he hears his name called by his lover. Now, as I said before, a lot of the souls in Limbo are people that have passed before they got the chance to be baptized. And a big part of the reason why people are baptized is to be named before God. It's a common theme in Hozier's work for his love interests to be seen as deities. And I've talked a lot in the past about the way he holds this worship for them. So the thing that I'm kind of getting from this song is that when he hears his lover, his God, calling his name, it's confirming his faith in this person. The song also dances with the idea of death and rebirth, which is also another theme that is closely tied to baptism, because you hear, born again Christians. Hozier refers to it in more of a cyclical nature though, which really, works with the theme of the album. Remember once I told you about how before I heard it from your mouth, my name would always hit my ears as such an awful sound. And the soul, if that's what you call it, uneasy ally of the body, it felt nameless as a river, undiscovered, underground. So this just introduces us to the idea that I was talking about before, about how it's different when his lover calls his name. I get the sense that maybe communicating with others felt like a bit of a chore, and I think it's pretty clear that Hozier leans towards being more introverted. And as an introvert myself, I get it. I know that feeling of hearing my name called and just thinking, oh my God, someone's going to ask me for something, and I just don't have the energy. It feels like his name doesn't hold much meaning, like it doesn't particularly belong to him. And look, this could be a massive stretch, but maybe this is because everyone that loves him knows him as Hozier. Like all of his fans, people around the world, interviewers, they all know him as Hozier. So to hear someone that he holds in such high regard, Andrew, it just feels different. And the first time that you kissed me, I drank dry the river Lethy. The Liffey would have been much softer on my stomach all the same. But you spoke some quick new music that went so far to soothe this soul, as it ever was and ever shall be on earth without a name. Now the river Lethy, let's talk about that one. This is one of the 5 rivers of the underworld, and it borders Elysium in Greek mythology, which is the final resting place of the virtuous. Lethy itself means forgetfulness or concealment or oblivion. Ovid wrote about this river and claimed that it ran through the cave of Hypnos, who was the god of sleep, and as a result, the murmuring of the river would induce drowsiness. The key part here is that the shades were required, shades being people that have passed, they were required to drink from this river to forget their earthly lives. Do you say where this is adding up? Dante's hero Virgil also wrote about the Lethy, and he said that drinking from this and removing their memories was the only way that they could then be reincarnated. To unearth without a name is this act of reincarnation for Hozier. Now the Liffey is the main river that runs through Dublin, and it's not known for being the most sanitary river. You could think of it somewhat as an Irish answer for the Thames. So this is a really strong device used in comparison to display how important this reimagining of himself is for Hozier through this woman. The last line I find particularly interesting, as it was and ever shall be on earth without a name. It's very reminiscent of like a traditional prayer, which really builds nicely on this whole theme. Some part of me must have died the first time that you called me baby, and some part of me came alive the first time that you called me baby. Again, this chorus is just really driving home that theme of death and rebirth. These days, I think I owe my life to the flowers that were left here by my mother. Ain't that like them gifting life to you again? This life lived mostly underground, unknowing either sight nor sound, till reaching up for sunlight just to be ripped out by the stem. This has got to be some of my favourite lines from this whole album. They are just so beautiful. This is the first reference we get in this narrative of the main character being dead. So I kind of gather that this is not a relationship that lasted. He has flowers planted at his grave by his mother. You know, flowers are living things, and he's talking about the generous nature of mothers by continuing to bring life despite having given the ultimate gift of life, giving birth. Your parents also give you your name, and it's clear that this act of naming is a life-giving act. The second half of this verse really it describes limbo pretty well, obviously not having sight or sound, and then the last line about being ripped out by the stems flows nicely into this pre-chorus. Sensing only now it's dying, drying out, then drowning blindly, blooming forth its every colour in the moments it has left, to share the space with the simple living things, infinitely suffering but fighting off like all creation the absence of itself anyway. Now this almost feels like a little side quest. Hozier just slipping in this incredibly beautiful observation on humanity and nature. We're talking about that final act of defiance before death, because instinctually living things don't want to die. They are fighting off the absence of itself. Nature has been coded to want to survive and multiply. Drowning blindly is an interesting term. Hozier often talks about being buried, which he has done here, and I guess that kind of is what burial is. You are drowning blindly in dirt. Whatever keeps you around, it keeps you around. Again, this bridge is just kind of echoing the sentiment of the last pre-chorus, just this cyclical nature of life and relationships and that instinct to survive. The last time it was heard out loud, the perfect genius of our hands and mouths was shocked to resignation as the arguing declined. When I was young, I used to guess, are there any limits to emptiness? When was the last time? Come here, when was the last time? Some part of me must have died the final time you called me baby, but some part of me came alive the final time you called me baby. Truly heartbreaking. By the end, we know that this relationship hasn't lasted, and there's still a process of understanding that needs to be gone through. The perfect genius of our hands and mouths was shocked to resignation as the arguing declined. How stunning is that line? Their physical instincts that felt so natural had their own death as the truth came to the surface. There's part of this song that really reminds me of Jackie and Wilson, which is one of my absolute favourite Hozier songs. I actually plan on getting a tattoo to honour it. But there's a line that goes, every version of me dead and buried in the yard outside. I think it's become clear that with every person that walks into his life, a new version of Hozier is born. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to, that whole just cycle of life and death and rebirth. And that's something that certainly carries through the entirety of this album. Our second circle punishes those who have committed the sin of lust. Now, Francesca certainly sits within this circle, but as I said before, already covered it, so we're going to skip that for now. Icarian is an extension of that theme that Francesca introduces of being in the air and being in love. And it obviously is referencing the story of Icarus, the man who flew too high to the sun with his man-made wings and then plummeted to his death because they melted. But Hozier sort of warps that narrative. So rather than being aware of the fact that he is falling to his death, he is wrapped up in this feeling of flight and being just rushing through the air, and it feels ecstatic, and he's not even aware of the fact that he's dead. If the winds turn, if I hit a squall, allow the ground to find its brutal way to me. Now this seems to be our link to the second circle. Souls are tormented by great winds that ravish them. And so I came where light is mute, a place that moans as oceans do impelled by storms, surging, embattled in conflicting squalls. The swirling wind of hell will never rest. It drags these spirits onwards in its force. It chafes them, rolling, clashing grievously. Then, once they reach the point from which they fell, screams, keening cries, the agony of all, and all blaspheming at the holy power. Caught in this torment, as I understood, were those who, here condemned for carnal sin, made reason boast their instinctual bent. As starlings on the wing in winter chills are borne along in wide and teeming flocks, so on these breathing gusts the evil souls. This way and that, up and down they're borne. Here is no hope or any comfort ever, neither of respite nor of lesser pain. I feel lighter than I have in so much time. I've crossed the borderline of weightless. One deep breath out from the sky. I've reached a rarer height now that I can confirm. All our weight is just a burden offered to us by the world. Our weight is just a burden offered to us by the world. I'm just going to give you a second for that to sink in. Wow. If anything could fall at all, it's the world that falls away from me. These lines kind of show that there's a denial of danger, kind of like saying, I'm not falling, you're falling. I also think it adds quite nicely to this whole theme of the world as we know it being turned on its head. It's a very surreal dimension that we're in. You have me floating like a feather on the sea, while you're as heavy as the world that you hold your hands beneath. Once I wondered what was holding up the ground, but I can see that all along, love, it was you all the way down. So there's a reference here to the Greek story of Atlas, which is not the first time Hozier has referenced that in his song, so it's clear that that's probably one of his favourite stories. Atlas is burdened with the task of holding the heavens, the weight of the heavens above his shoulders. So it's clear here that Hozier is saying not only is this person holding his whole world in her hands, but her soul is heavy too. And we know that in past songs, Hozier really likes to sing about the dark things within women. It Was You All the Way Down, maybe a reference to the turtles all the way down theory, which is this idea that the world rests on the back of a giant turtle who is also resting on the back of an even bigger turtle who is resting on pillars of smaller turtles, and on forever. This tale is a expression of the problem of infinite regress, which is an infinite series of entities governed by a recursive principle that determines how each entity in the series depends on its predecessor. Please don't ask me to explain that further. Leave it now, I am skybound. If you need, darling, lean your weight to me. We'll float away, but if we fall, I only pray don't fall away from me. This man's in love and he does not care what damage it does. He just needs to be with this woman. I do not have wings, love, I never will. Soaring over the world you're carrying. If these heights should bring my fall, let me be your own, I carrion. If the winds turn, if I hit a squall, allow the ground to find its brutal way to me. If I should fall on that day, I only pray, don't fall away from me. So carrion is the decaying flesh of an animal. So I think this is just all adding to this idea that Hozier is dead, metaphorically. Let's not make this a Paul McCartney conspiracy scenario. He is willing to take on any brutal ending just as long as his partner doesn't stray from him. The thing that struck me is him asking her to not fall away from him. And previous, like up further in the song, he references that if anything could fall, it would be the world. So does he see her as his entire world? Or perhaps this world represents their relationship. He says that he is reborn only when she claims him. So this version of himself only exists in this realm. And we know that she holds the power. She holds his world in her hands. So if she leaves, his world crumbles. And now I would like to introduce to you the first part of my little surprise. I have created some prints that are inspired by this album. This is the first print. This is my I Carrion print. It has the if anything could fall at all, it's the world that falls away from me quote. And then down the bottom, you can see it says the title. We've got this sort of, I thought he looked like a Greek god. I don't know. He's falling, but is he falling away from the world? Is the world falling? Who knows? I just wanted to play with that subverted reality kind of thing. And then there's obviously some feathers to represent the story of Icarus and that influence on this song. So yes, that is that. And you will learn more about the others and where you can get these later on. But yeah, just putting that out there. Now, next is Eat Your Young, which we've already covered, so we will skip that and we will move straight on to Damage Gets Done, which sits in the fourth circle of hell, which is greed. So, inhabiting the fourth circle of hell, you have two different classes of sinners. You have the avaricious, who hoarded their wealth, and then you have the prodigal, who squandered their riches. And this flows well from the previous circles where they punish lust and gluttony, which are continuation of the theme of indulgence. Now, Damage Gets Done feels to me like someone that is stepped back and is looking at their life. Maybe they've gotten carried away with either hoarding or squandering their wealth, and they're realizing that the best times actually came from when those two options weren't options at all, because there wasn't money there in the first place. Before we get into these lyrics, just a moment of gratitude for the fact that we have Brandi Carlile on this. What a talent. Just beautiful voice. And I'm so glad that they did a song together, because they just work so well. Without shame, 2 outfits then to my name. You'd end up in one when you'd stay. We had nowhere to go and every desire for going there. I heard once it's the comfort that makes us feel numb. We'd go out with no way to get home and would sleep on somebody's floor and wake up feeling like a millionaire. Something about this really reminds me of On the Road by Jack Kerouac, just that wild spirit, and it reminds me of that really famous quote. The only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time, the ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles, exploding like spiders across the stars. That quote changed my life in high school because I just did not understand teenage apathy, and I found it really infuriating, actually. There's also something about the song that, again, reminds me of Jackie Wilson, just that young, reckless energy, not worrying about the end of the night, just living in the moment, stealing a Lexus. Wish I'd known it was just our turn being blamed for a world we had no power in. You and I had nothing to show, but the best of the world in the palm of our hands. Every generation experiences it, being blamed by your elders for a world gone mad. And it just, that plays in really well with this whole cyclical theme of the album. And then you've got reference to the last track with the world being held by the hands of this relationship. And when you've got nothing to your name, all you have is your hands to hold things. You don't have a safe to put it in, nor do you have the money for the things that would solidify a relationship, like a house or a marriage. And darling, I haven't felt it since then. I don't know how the feeling ended, but I know being reckless and young is not how the damage gets done. This comes back to what I was saying in the beginning about this person looking back and realizing that money changed things for the worse. Maybe at one point they thought that period of time brought around the most damage, but at this age, it's clear that it's actually quite the opposite. I like how there's these two moments in time being compared with one another, and I think you can almost link that to the two types of sinners in this circle. You have the young representing the reckless spenders, and then you have the old representing the hoarders. Oh, if the car ran, the car was enough. If the sun shone on us, it's a plus. And the tank was always filled up, only enough for our getting there. Honestly, this feels a little too real right now. We are living in a cost of living crisis, just buying enough to get through the day. But this is just a really beautiful thing to sing about, and I really hope that one day I get to feel like that with someone. That first car was like wings on an angel before the whole wide world got too thin. I swear goodwill kept up that engine. You were steering my heart like a wheel in your hands. My heart's in overdrive and you're behind the steering. I love Justin Hawkins. This song is probably the simplest on the album to break down, but I think that's the thing that's beautiful about it. It's so open and honest, and I get this real sense of surrender, just admitting something to not only the audience but to themselves, and now having to sit in that now public truth. It's such a wonderful reflection on time and the way values are revealed through a retrospective lens. So, the fifth circle punishes the wrathful, and similar to the last circle, there's two types of sinners in this area. You have the actively wrathful that are still fighting on the top of the surface of the river Styx, and then there are the sullen who are kind of just living in their agony, lying beneath the surface of the water. Dante describes them as sinking into a black sulkiness which can find no joy in God or man or the universe. And I keep that in mind as we're going through this song, a black sulkiness. So, who we are. You only feel it when it's lost. Getting through still has a cost. Quietly it slips through your fingers, love, falling from you drop by drop. What I had left there, I just held it tight so someone with your eyes might come in time to hold me like water, or Christ, hold me like a knife. This song is really just lamenting on the pain of existence, with particular importance on loss. I don't think it focuses on any one particular type of loss. I think it could refer to a range of things, the loss of loved ones, the loss of memories, of hope, of time. And these are things that we must all go through. No one's exempt. It's just a condition of the human experience, and we have to find comfort in the things that we're able to. So, like finding a partner. So Hozier, I think here is hoping that someone will come his way as relief. To hold me like water, or Christ hold me like a knife is so, so powerful. Both need to be handled with a great deal of care. Obviously, a knife held wrong can injure you, but water as well you have to be careful when you're holding it, otherwise it will slip through your fingers, which is a common theme in this album. I also just find the juxtaposition here really interesting. One is a foundation of life. Every living thing needs water to survive. And then one thing can take a life. You know, a knife can end a life. To me, it's almost like Hozier saying, I don't care if I'm good or bad for you. Either way, can you just hold me? We're born at night. So much of our lives is just carving through the dark to get so far. And the hardest part is who we are. It's who we are. So much of our life is spent trying to find a purpose or meaning. Particularly in this day and age, there's so much pressure to, find what you're put on earth to do, or even just define who you are. And then the rest of your time is just trying to figure out your surroundings, trying to make a living, just literally carving through the unknown. And like I mentioned before, the pandemic was a unique time where a lot of us were really confronted with who we are at the core. And I think if we're all being honest, there are dark parts in all of us that we don't like. And I think what Hozier is pointing out here is that sometimes the hardest things in life is literally just being who you are or coming to terms with who you are. And there's something about this that echoes the vision for me of the sullen who are sinking into the sticks, just taking in the pain of who they are. You and I burnt out our steam chasing someone else's dream. How can something be so much heavier but so much less than what it seems? Darling, we sacrificed, we gave our time to something undefined. This phantom life sharpens like an image, but it sharpens like a knife. Here he's alluding to the pursuit of what society has deemed as the right path, and how that can crush us when it doesn't align with who we truly are, and that is bitterly relatable. This phantom life sharpens like an image, but it sharpens like a knife. Again, letting that sink in for a second. I think this is a play on words of phantom limb, which is when someone loses a limb or is amputated, but they can still feel it, and they can still feel pain. So it's something that feels real but isn't. He's going through the motions of life, but it's not really his. And as he's realizing that, and as that's coming into focus like an image sharpening, that's hurtful. It's like a knife to the heart. This is just a beautifully sad song and adds to that feeling that I get that this album is just a real act of surrender for Hozier, just lying out his inner being for us to receive. And I can't even imagine how brave you have to be to do something like that. So if by some freak chance that Hozier sees this, I just want to say thank you, Andrew, on behalf of all of us. Now, you get the drill by now. We've already covered All Things End, so we will be moving on to Son of Nyx, but not before I introduce to you the second print. This is probably my favourite print of the collection. This is the All Things End print. Obviously, it says All Things End. In the background, I don't know if you can see that, there's like a little skull prince thing, the crown, kind of, Hozier in this album is dead, apparently, so he is our Prince of Death. There's a little bleeding heart at the top there, just in reference to the lyrics. If there was anyone that went through this life with their heart still intact, they didn't do it right. At the bottom of that little laurel there, you have AJHB for Andrew John Hozier Byrne. And then bordering the print is just the chorus of All Things End. I have this one sitting on my desk. I'm really proud of this one. And if you want it, you can wait to the end to know how you can get your hands on it. Son of Nyx began as a piano piece that Hozier's bassist and very good friend Alex Ryan sent over to him. And it's reserved as a tribute to Alex's father, who passed away just shortly beforehand. This is partly where the title comes from. Alex's father was called Nick, so Alex is the son of Nick. And I think we can all agree that you can really feel every part of emotion that went into this song. In terms of its tie to Inferno, Nyx is the Greek primordial goddess of night. Yes, that's correct. And was born at the dawn of creation. She had many offspring, one of whom is believed to be Charon, who is a character that we meet along the way in Inferno. He is the ferryman that ferries souls across the river Acheron. Although he isn't necessarily a comforting presence, he does play that role of a chaperone for those that have just entered the afterlife. And that's a theme that will come up a little bit later. I need this song to either be written into a movie or used for a ballet performance because it is just so cinematic and so emotive, and I've just never heard anything like it on a contemporary album. It sounds to me how it feels to look at art from the Sublime movement. Just that I see sweeping landscapes filled with the unknown, just that mixture of awe and curiosity and terror. I see John Martin's destruction of Pompeii and Herculaneum, or the great day of his wrath. I am just in love with it. We are losing light fast. So, to someone from a warm climate, this is just a lovely one. I find a lot of beauty in works that create meaning in such minute observations. And in this song, we get a full narrative coming from just the simple of act of trying to get a bed warm. A joy hard learned in winter was the warming of the bed. You'd shake for minutes there and move your legs. Wrap blanket over you and keep your head within. Let your breath heat the air until you feel it getting thin. Like Damage Gets Done, there's a straightforwardness in this song. It's just very open and honest, and I think that's what makes it feel so innocent. Obviously, as we know from the title, this person is not used to a cold climate, whereas Hozier would be. So this, watching this person try and get warm just would have been a curious observation for him. Ushkareth, the feeling of coldness only water brings. There are some things that no one teaches you, love, that come natural as the dream you didn't know you were in. So Ushkareth, and I really hope I'm saying that right, I did do my research, but I don't know. The second line pretty much explains that, but it literally means just the cooling of something from water. It's a nice comparison to the unpleasant coldness in the first verse, whereas this is more of a relieving coolness. I think the things he's singing about that come naturally to us are just, acts of love, the habits you build with someone, the instinct to want to be close to someone, and just how that is built into us. But things like knowing how to live in a climate, that's taught. Like a lot of my theories in this video, this could be a reach, but the line about not knowing that you're in a dream kind of reminds me of going back to De Selby and his weird, theories about life and death and rebirth, and how it's all just one big hallucination. And I just really enjoy this whole theme of just a complete change in what we think is our reality. Just this weird dimension that we're living in. In summer's heat, I learned to dread the coming of the night, the awful things we do to make the head go quiet. You'd press your body to the concrete when you were small. The rains of winter seem to never leave the walls. This is almost the inverse of the first verse, where someone is seeking out heat. This person is seeking out relief from that heat. We've already read about the cooling that the water brings, so this is just sort of bringing that up again, the way concrete would stay cool in the summer, almost as if these winter rains are perpetually on this. It was the only thing that didn't heat up during the summer. And I'm guessing that the awful things we do to make the head go quiet is referring to drinking or, other substance use. And I wish I could say that the river of my arms have found the ocean. I wish I could say the cold lake water of my heart, Christ, it's boiling over. But it happened easy, darling, natural as another leg around you in the bed frame. I think this is a love song written after the relationship. To me, Hozier seems to be the one that seeks relief, while his partner is the one that seeks heat. And they just didn't match up in the end, and he wishes he could say that they found what they wanted. I just really love this contrast of hot and cold, and the way it points out the differences in what people want, and also the things that people find curious, just things that people observe about others. I think it's a really sweet addition to the album to break up the emotional torment that a lot of the other songs brings. Talking of which, now our journey brings us to the 7th circle, which is violence, and this circle is broken up into 3 different rings. You have ring 1, which is held for those who have committed violence against neighbours, ring 2, who is for people who have committed violence against themselves, and then those who have committed violence against God, art and nature go to ring 3. Our next song, Butchered Tongue, sits firmly in that first bracket for those who have committed violence against others and their property. And I do just want to give a little bit of a content warning for anyone from a First Nations or Indigenous background, or anyone that comes from a community that has been subjected to colonisation, because this song is quite sad and it's quite heavy. This track centres around the loss of native languages and the misunderstandings of the pieces that remain. Obviously, Hozier, being from Ireland, he has a lot of experience with living in a place that, had horrific attempts of completely eradicating a culture. And me now living in Australia, that's a very prevalent issue here as well. I live on stolen land and I live under a constitution that still doesn't recognise Indigenous people. And I live in a place where the government just lets mining companies blow up sacred Indigenous sites with no real consequences. And that's something I care about, and I feel a real solidarity with this song. So let's look into the lyrics. As a child, it was the place names, singing at me at the first thing, how the mouth must be employed in every corner of itself, to say Apalachicola or Hushpakina, like Guibara, or promise sung softly of somewhere else. So in Ireland, as far as I know, it's actually a legal requirement to have the Irish names next to the English names on all road signs. So growing up, Hozier would have seen this a lot. He would have been exposed to this a lot. And he's just sort of noting here the difference in literally the way you speak, the way you use your mouth to say these native names compared to these English names. Now, as I've mentioned before in some previous videos, I'm obsessed with researching the origins of words and names. So obviously I had to go through and dig out what each of these place names mean. So Apalachicola is a city in Florida, and it's right where the Apalachicola River meets the Gulf of Mexico. And native communities thrived here until Spanish settlers came in. It was named after the Apalachicola tribe who inhabited the area, and that comes from the Hitchoti words Apalachi, meaning other side, and Oakley, meaning people. So it's assumed that together they meant just literally people on the other side of the river. Hushpakina, both a town and a river in Mississippi, mentioned in Tom Waits's Pony. The name is derived from the Choctaw language, and it means abundance of sunflowers, which is very appropriate given that the Hushpakina River is a tributary of the Sunflower River. And lastly, Guibara, this is in County Donegal, and it is the bay located at the mouth of the river Guibara. As far as I can find, Gui is Irish for estuary, so this just sort of means estuary of the River Barra. Now, the exciting thing about this, at least for me, is I get to talk about Seamus Heaney again, because this is not the first time that a poet has mentioned Guibara in their work. Seamus, a shared favourite between me and Hozier, mentions Guibara in his poem The Singer's House. So I say to myself Guibara, and its music hits off the place like water hitting off granite. Heaney wrote this poem for his good friend David Hammond, who was a prominent folk singer, and he spent a lot of time in David's holiday home in Guibara. This poem was to remind him to keep singing in a time when singing wasn't bringing a lot of joy. This was the time of the Troubles in Ireland. And I just think this is a beautiful connection between Hozier and Seamus, both referencing the ongoing impacts of the oppression of Ireland and using art to understand that and encouraging others to use their art. And because of that, looking back, I can't help but make this huge connection between that poem and to making noise, from Wasteland Baby, which is a song literally about encouraging someone to sing. Anyhow, I'm on a tangent, so let's get back to the lyrics. And as a young man blessed to pass so many road signs and have my foreign ear made fresh again on each unlikely sound, but feel at home hearing a music that few still understand, a butchered tongue still singing here above the ground. So when he's traveling, he feels a comfort in reading place names that have ancient origins, because that's what he grew up around and it's what he appreciates. In an interview, he spoke about visiting all these places on the road and asking locals what the name meant, and people just not knowing because the languages just haven't survived as well as they need to. People just don't understand them anymore. The ears were chopped from young men if the pitch cap didn't kill them. They are buried without a scalp in the shattered bedrock of our home. You may never know your fortune until the distance has been shown between what is lost forever and what can still be known. So this is directly referencing the atrocities of the Wexford Rebellion of 1798, which was fought by the Society of United Irishmen against the British forces after the torture of Anthony Perry, who was a member, and the massacre of Dunlaven Green. Dunlaven being a town in the County Wicklow area, which is where Hozier is from. Those first two lines are referencing pitch capping, which is just a brutal way of executing someone. Not that all ways of executing someone isn't brutal. So a cap would be made of pitch, which is like a tar sort of substance. It was put onto the head of Irish captives, and then that was lit on fire, which was excruciating to the point where the pain usually killed people, and if not, they were executed anyway. And to top it off, they were denied a proper burial, which is what that second line is referencing. Humans are just the most evil. I don't know. It's like something ripped straight out of Inferno. And so much of this conflict around the world is down to religion. And these people do these things thinking that they're still going to get into heaven. It's just madness. I also just wanted to mention the way those last lines kind of mirror some lyrics in Unknown. I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but let's just look at them side by side. Until the distance has been shown between what is lost forever and what can still be known. Ignored the vastness between all that can be seen and all that we believe. I don't know if I'm just losing it, but I wanted to note that. So far from home to have a stranger call you darling, and have your guarded heart be lifted up like a child by the hand, in some town that just means home to them. With no translator left to sound, a butchered tongue still singing here above the ground. The language, or pronunciation, has been long buried with the people that originally spoke it, but there's still echoes of that history through, slightly misspelled place names, and then I think Hozier finds comfort in that. Despite every trial it's endured, these ancient cultures are still fighting to the surface and to be heard, just like the flowers in First Time, fighting off the absence of themselves. I think this song is very important and very relevant, especially now when Indigenous issues are finally being pushed to the forefront. And this is your reminder, if you're an Australian, to vote yes in the upcoming Voice referendum so that we can finally acknowledge our First Nations people constitutionally. Okay, we are on to Anything But, which sits in the 8th circle of hell, which is fraud. This one, like many others on this album, is only really loosely based on this circle, and I think the main part of this song that ties it to that is the way that the lyrics trick you. It seems like an upbeat love song, but really when you look into it, this is just Hozier's nice way of saying, I don't want anything to do with you at all. Come here to me, I wish I was a Mayflower on the River Tay. I'd fit all my joys and my pleasures in one perfect day. I wish I was the sunlight just sitting on the Mississippi. I'd settle for a shopping trolley in the Lethy. In a shot, I'd swap my body for a body of water. I'd worry the cliffside top as a wave crashing over. I'd lower the world in a flood, or better yet, I'd cause a drought. If I was a riptide, I wouldn't take you out. Forget Unreal Unearth. Can we rename this album Unreal Unriver? Because how many references to different rivers does Hozier need in an album? Like both real rivers and rivers from myths. Honestly, I relate to this so much. Mayflies only survive for like 24 hours after reaching maturity. And I just think that'd be a blissful life. Just experiencing everything, just living your own little life, free from human connection and conflict, and then poof, you're gone. I've always said that if reincarnation is real, I want to come back as a duck, but that's a story for another day. Let's talk about that last line. If I was a riptide, I wouldn't take you out. Seems nice, right? Like I'd spare you. Not quite. This is just kind of a nice Irish way of saying, I just don't want anything to do with you, even to get revenge. I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole kind of vibe. I think the whole message of this song is just kind of like, I want to do all these things or I want to do nothing at all, but either way, I don't want you in the picture. I don't want to be anything, but I would do everything just to run away. I don't want to be anything like this at all, but I would do everything if you'd hear me say, go look another way. Basically just carrying on from what I said before, encouraging this person to just leave and find whatever trouble they're looking for elsewhere. Look, I want to be loud, so loud I'm talking seismic. I want to be soft as a single stone in a rain stick. I want to be the thunder of 100,000 hooves moving quick. If I was a stampede, you wouldn't get a kick. I want to be the shadow when my bright future's behind me. I want to be the last thing anybody ever sees. I hear he touches your hand and then you fly away together. If I had his job, you would live forever. Surely this man's got to have a Libra placement somewhere in that birth chart, just, not being able to pick a personality, Sylvia Plath's fig tree and all that. There's not much more you can deduce from this song. It's just a further reinforcement of what already has been said. And I do get a real giggle out of this song. Hozier really said, if I was the Grim Reaper, I wouldn't even bother. I'd let you live on. As long as I never have to talk to you again, you can have immortality. That is hilarious and poetic roasting at its finest. And the sickest thing about all this, he leads from this song into abstract. And listen here, Andrew, you are not well for making that decision. That was not a kind decision. This song I had the hardest time with just emotionally because it deals with the death of an animal, which is something I'm really not good with. I love animals more than humans, and just the mere thought of someone mistreating an animal can bring me to tears in an instant. So much to the point where I think I should probably talk to a therapist about it. I get really persistent and obsessive, intrusive thoughts about really horrible things happening to my pets, to the point where I've picked up some really weird habits, like having to go into the laundry and opening the closed washing machine, checking if there's an animal in there, even spinning the cylinder around as if one of my cats has shrunk and somehow managed to attach herself to the top of the cylinder and still be out of sight. So yeah, a song that talks about an animal being hit by a car shattered me. Now, if you haven't looked it up yet and you're wondering what the heck psychopomp means, don't worry, I was with you. I thought maybe it was some weird new genre he was going to try out, some avant-garde kind of thing, which I'm glad I was wrong about. So a psychopomp is a mythological spirit that acts as a guide for the recently deceased as they navigate the journey from the living world to the afterlife. And it will become pretty apparent where that idea comes in as we go through this song. Sometimes it returns like rain that you slept through, that washed off the world, the streets looking brand new. I will not be great, but I'm grateful to get through. The feeling came late, I'm still glad I met you. He's talking about a feeling here that lies dormant, apart from the occasional appearance, but rather than feeling it to its full extent, he just experiences it and it washes over him and then runs away. It's still sad, but it doesn't affect his inner world as much as it did. And despite whatever happened, he's still grateful that he met this person. The memory hurts, but does me no harm. Your hand in my pocket to keep us both warm. The poor thing in the road, its eyes still glistening. The cold wet of your nose, the earth from a distance. And this is where it gets heavy for me. I have to literally detach myself emotionally from this to even begin to talk about how this creature's eyes were still glistening. My theory is that this song is partly a love song, but also partly a declaration of hope for humankind and the world. Hozier has said in a few interviews that he doesn't have any hope for the future, but he does believe in the kindness of people. And this song is kind of saying, look how the best parts of us shine in these moments of brutality. He follows it with see how it shines after talking about the animal's eye, this person's nose, and the earth from a distance. He's see how beautiful this world is outside of politics and outside of industry or whatever. Look how beautiful our basic instincts are and how beautiful these moments are outside of when everything's pushed aside. Sometimes there's a thought like you chose what you're doing, but it comes to naught when I look back through it. I remember the view, streetlights in dark blue, the moment I knew I'd no choice but to love you. This is him realizing that this person ran out to help this animal without even thinking. It was just their natural instinct that kicked in. And him recognizing that instinctual compassion is what made him fall in love. The speed that you moved, the screech of the cars, the creature still moving that slowed in your arms. The fear in its eyes gone out in an instant. Your tear caught the light, the earth from a distance. No. I haven't been able to get that image out of my head for weeks. I can't believe he's done this to me. It's just cruel at this point. So this is where that psychopomp thing comes into it. This person put themselves in danger to be there for this creature as it passed. They literally comforted it as it stopped breathing in their arms. I can't. It's so tragic, yet so beautiful at the same time. I don't know what I'm going to do with this song because it's tattooed on me. Not literally, just like tattooed on my heart. Darling, there's a part of me I'm afraid will always be trapped within an abstract from a moment of my life. The weeds up through the concrete, the traffic picking up speed, all my love and terror balanced between those eyes. So these are memories that are really important to him, whether he likes it or not. He relives them often to the point where he feels trapped sometimes in them. Once again, don't know if this is a reach, but it kind of reminds me of The Third Policeman again. At the end of that book, the main character realizes that what he thought was reality was actually just like a distorted version of the same day that he was living. And now he was trapped in this endless loop of bizarre scenarios, just living it over and over again. And it all sort of ties into De Selby's idea of life and death just all being one big hallucination. Even though his lover is not in his life anymore, they still exist in these memories and they still exist in these abstracts. This song just ripped my soul in two. And that's why I had to make some art about it. This is my third and last print. It is the abstract print. It says "See How It Shines" and it has the title down at the bottom, and a very non-dead animal. I wanted to focus more on the positive side of this song, seeing the world shining, the natural world shining, and being reminded of, the goodness of humanity. So that's why I picked "See How It Shines." There's a little sun in the background there, and I just wanted to tribute this piece to the magnificence of this creature before human intervention murdered it. So it's in this nice midnight blue because he mentioned the dark blue against the streetlights in the song, and I really love this one too, and I hope you do too. And just stay around to know how you can get your hands on it. Now we are skipping Unknown and we are heading to our very last track, First Light. This song represents the ascent, the re-emergence from hell back into the light. I don't think it's necessary to deep dive all these lyrics. It's really just the whole thing's about waking up in a new day or a new life. We've established by now that Hozier sees different phases of his life as rebirths, and this is the dawn of a new one. And he feels like he has lived his whole life in the darkness before this one. And I am just completely and utterly floored by how stunning and powerful this track is. I've never felt such an out-of-body experience listening to the ending of the album like I did with this one. It was like someone just wiped my brain and I was seeing colours for the first time. And when that choir kicked in, oh my God, someone needs to put this in a movie, otherwise that would be the truest travesty to ever happen. It's just such a perfect ending to an album. Like, we've lived this whole life. It brings it full circle back to the beginning again. And by the time the listener has listened to the full album, we've had a whole life and death and rebirth just in that hour. We went from falling deliriously like Icarus to being in the trenches to being back up in this euphoric feeling again. I am really just so taken by this album. It has redefined to me what modern art can be. It has reignited this passion in me, and I'm just so thankful for this beautiful reflection of humanity and all its beauty and all of its ugliness. I feel changed from this point forward. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I am a dramatic person. And now I think I'm going to stop talking because I've said what I want to say. And now I am so ready to sit back and take in what you have to say. Like I stress with every single one of my videos, this is all just my opinion and my interpretation. And the beauty of art is that everything's subjective and your opinion may be completely different to mine. And I love that. I love sitting back and looking at these comments because it just blows my mind every time and it brings a whole new level of appreciation for a piece of art. So please, if you have anything to say about this album at all, don't be afraid to get into the comments and just type your heart out. Please, yeah, give me everything. Now, if you allow me to, I'm just going to plug these prints again. You can get them on my Etsy store, which will be linked down below. They are $12 each, or you can get all three for a discounted price of $30. They are available in a 300 GSM satin card or a linen card, which just sort of has like that crisscross, more natural texture to it, and you can pick whatever you want. I will be shipping worldwide. Every order will get a little note from me, and I'm so excited to just pack an order. I just love the like admin side of stuff like that. Please by no means feel pressured to purchase anything at all though. We're living in a dire time with this cost of living. Every dollar counts, so just you being here is support enough, so thank you. If this is our first time meeting, hello, I'm Honor, and I can't believe that you've stuck around this long, so thank you so much. And if you would like to join our little gang here that we have going on, we would love to have you. And the best part, all you have to do is subscribe and you are officially part of the gang. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would help me out a lot. And if you have any Hozier fans in your life and you want to share this with them, that would just mean the world. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'm gonna go lay down and not speak to a single soul for 24 hours. And I will see you later. Bye.